This is Skyreat Anamorphic Lens for the GoPro Hero 10 Black, and in this video we're going to review it. This lens is an additional accessory for your GoPro Hero 10 camera. Also, it can be used with the GoPro Hero 9, and probably by now you know, and for those of you who don't know, the GoPro Hero 10 and the GoPro Hero 9, they do share the same lens attachment. And to be exact, the attachment for additional accessories or adapters to be placed on the stock lens, like filters, UV, ND, or these type of lenses like anamorphic or the max lens mode. The very first thing I want to mention at the beginning of this video is, do I recommend this anamorphic lens from Skyreat? Yes, I do 100% recommend this lens. It will create very particular and amazing looking quality footage. It will also improve your GoPro's night type of or low light filming capabilities. So yes, I do recommend it, and let's get into the video. In this video, I am not going to tell you the origins of the anamorphic lenses and where they come from. Instead, I am aiming to deliver you the direct and straight to the point information in regards to the user. So how to set it up correctly on your GoPro camera, Hero 10 again or Hero 9. And I'm gonna tell you exactly what it does and what kind of footage you can achieve by using it. Let's get into it. You can achieve very cinematic looking footage by using the anamorphic lens. What I mean by cinematic footage. This lens will allow you to capture very wide field of view without the distortion of the fisheye lens. And the thing that you need to remember is that it does record footage distorted. So in essence, when you film with the anamorphic lens, you would need to work on that footage in post, and you will have to, in your editing software, perform a procedure called de-squeezing, because this lens, by capturing such a wide field of view, will squash the image and it will stretch it. It will cause the image to bulk out, stretch in a vertical plane. So if you was going to record with the GoPro Hero 10 or 9 and watch it back on your screen, you're going to see that the whole footage looks kind of off. It's distorted. So this is not the fault of your camera, or this is not the fault of the lens. The image just needs post-production de-stretching. To edit my content, I use a software called LumaFusion, and it's the software which is designed for iOS devices, so mobile platforms. You can use it on iPhones and iPads. I edit on iPad. And when it comes to the anamorphic footage coming from the Skyreat lens and the GoPro Hero 10, in my case, I go to open new project, and let's call it anamorphic. Now, when it comes to frame rate, you choose the frame rate you was filming at. So let's say 23.98. And now we're going to choose our aspect ratio, and that is a very important thing. So we're going to click on that, and if you scroll, eventually you're going to come across the widescreen aspect ratio. So we're going to go to anamorphic, which is 2:36:1 anamorphic Moondog. I'm choosing this one. That works great with the Skyreat Anamorphic Lens. And in terms of the color space, I choose standard Rec 709. And we open a new project. Now here I've got a anamorphic footage recorded with the Skyreat Anamorphic Lens on the GoPro Hero 10. And first I'm gonna play this as it was recorded. So let's say with the distortion, which shows you the squeezed footage. And it might not look that bad, but if you look closely, you're going to see that it is fairly distorted. It's squashed and it's longer in the vertical plane. So if I bring that to my timeline, I'm gonna wait for the footage to load. And now it's a very important thing. So as you can see, we've got these black bars already embedded into this footage. But when you are using LumaFusion, that's not all that you have to do, because we haven't squeezed the footage yet. So just because you put the timeline correctly for your anamorphic lens, for your anamorphic footage, that doesn't mean that's all you have to do in the LumaFusion. So you have to double tap or click on the pencil here to edit that clip. Further, you go to fit mode and you need to click onto stretch, because as you can see, this shows us the frame, right? So even though if I go back, we see the black bars, but that footage wasn't de-squeezed. As you can see, when we look at the detailed editing properties of that clip, we can see that that frame is still out of the visible frame of the screen. So we need to go to fit mode, click stretch, and as you can see now, that footage fits correctly and is de-squeezed. So this is how you de-squeeze the footage from Skyreat Anamorphic Lens on your iPad in LumaFusion, because when you go to Amazon, there's someone's comment who says that the lens doesn't work properly with the LumaFusion, or the footage from it doesn't work properly with LumaFusion. But as I'm showing you here, yes it does. So I'm going to quickly just apply for you a nice color grading LUT which I created, and now you can see that this footage looks correct. So we've got this wide screen and it's correctly de-squeezed. So if you look at this footage, I'm going to bring the same frame roughly, and this footage, now you can see directly how different they look. This is raw footage from the camera, so squeezed footage, and this is fully corrected de-squeezed footage. Again, you can see that it's much higher in terms of the vertical plane, whereas this one is wider in the horizontal plane, and this looks now correct. As you can see also, there's none of that fisheye effect. Sure, if I bring the camera very close to my face, it kind of looks like as if there is some sort of fisheye effect, but it's not. It's really not. Anything that you're going to bring close to your face, between your eyes, is going to appear like that. But as you can see, nice, beautiful footage, yeah, again, in comparison to this. Another thing related to that is that you're gonna end up after the de-squeezing process with the black bars on the top and the bottom, and you're gonna be able to now see that correct looking image with the wide field of view. So for instance, if you're the person who is looking to just record with the GoPro and you don't want to do any type of edits, you want to use the footage straight from the camera, then this lens may not be for you, or any, as a matter of fact, anamorphic lens may not be for you, even for like DSLR or mirrorless camera. Also, if you're the person who wants to have the full frame of, let's say, 16:9 in your playback after you, let's say, upload it to YouTube, and you want your image to fill the whole screen, then again, this lens is not for you, because it will generate these bars after the squeezing process. And that's what makes it the true cinematic, because it's wide field of view, the embedded black bars top and bottom. Also, another feature of this lens is that it will generate the lens flares. So if there is direct light into the lens, it will create horizontal lens flares. Probably you've seen them in series like Stranger Things, on many like sci-fi movies and things like that. So some people like it, some people don't like it. I think it's really good and it's very distinct and unique kind of look. And this particular lens, the Skyreat Anamorphic Lens, will produce bluish, kind of neonish type of lens flare, and they look very nice. And different anamorphic lenses may have different color flares. That being said, all these things, so the bars and the wide field of view, they're having to edit the footage in post-production, these are not cons of this lens or any anamorphic lens. Those are actually pros or prosperities of that lens. So when you film with this type of lens, you just need to know about it and take that into consideration if you want to deal with that. And by the way, the whole process of de-squeezing is very simple, it's very fast. You just need to have the software which allows you to do that. And it's really painless process. It takes no time, but each clip will have to be de-squeezed. Now let's move on to another very important point, which is how to set up this lens correctly on your GoPro cameras 10 and 9. First thing you want to do when using the Skyreat Anamorphic Lens is to, regardless of the resolutions that you're filming at, go to your field of view and set it up to only linear. Next thing you want to do is to turn off your hypersmooth completely. Now let me elaborate on that a little bit more. What you need to know and remember is that the hypersmooth stabilization and horizon lock are directly connected. So they are both part of the same camera stabilization. And as I said earlier, is the digital stabilization. So what happens is, when they on, the camera, to compensate any shakes and to being able to generate that amazing stabilization, it's cropping in into the frame. And when the camera is cropping into the frame, it makes the things that the sensor is perceiving closer to where they really are, like basically when you zoom in. Now, as you can see, this lens is quite long. So when it's on the camera, it sticks out a bit. So now, when we've got our hypersmooth on and we've got our horizon lock, we already cropped in. And as long you are not moving the camera is stationary, you're taking static shots, you can get away with it. You can keep it in horizon lock and hypersmooth on. But again, what's the point of having hypersmooth on when you are not moving the camera, right? So when it's on the tripod, you could get away with it, but there's no point. So that's why I'm saying you want to turn it off. Now, why do I say to you that you need to turn off your hypersmooth and only use the linear? It's because Once you start to introduce any slight movement, panning or tilt, using hypersmooth with this lens and horizon lock, you are going to see the vignetting on all the basically edges of the frame. So if you pan in, it's going to be from left to right. If you tilt, it's going to be from top to bottom. And that's not how you're supposed to use this lens. I am filming with the anamorphic lens from Skyreat, which can serve as a great cinematic lens, and for purpose of this example I am shooting in auto shutter speed because I've got no ND filter, so I want to allow the camera to basically set that correct exposure. Also, I've got the hypersmooth stabilization set to standard, and my field of view in the digital lens is linear plus horizon lock. And now pay attention to the horizon, left and right edges of the frame when I do this. So when you pay attention to the X axis of the horizon, what can you see? Now pay attention to the top and bottom of the frame when I do this. So the Y axis. And what did you see? Most likely you did see the vignetting, and that is because the field of view is set to linear plus horizon lock. Now, linear plus horizon lock is directly connected to your hypersmooth stabilization. So in essence, the camera is cropping into the footage, doing like a digital zoom, cropping into the frame, and by doing so it is seeing the edges of the lens, which is sticking out outside the GoPro's lens. Now, to avoid that and to get the correct filming footage with this lens, you want to turn off your hypersmooth. And once you turn off your hypersmooth, you are gonna get rid of that linear plus horizon lock. So you're going to be only set to linear in terms of field of view. So let's check it out. In this example, I set my hypersmooth 4.0 to off, and automatically as I do that, the field of view from linear plus horizon lock goes into linear. So that shows you that the horizon lock is directly connected and is a part of the hypersmooth 4.0 stabilization. Now, because we've got hypersmooth off and the field of view set to linear, check what happens to the side of the frame, left and right, when I do this. So as you can see, in that X horizon axis, there's no vignetting no more. I can do this and there's no vignetting whatsoever. The same thing, pay attention to the top and bottom of the frame. There's no vignetting because the lens is set to linear without the hypersmooth. So as I said earlier, hypersmooth crops into the frame, reveals at the same time the sides of the lens when we do even subtle movements like this. But with this settings, hypersmooth is off, and that fixes the vignetting. Sure, you've got your stabilization completely off, so image looks very shaky if I walk, if I start to move about. But to fix that, you want to use now mechanical external gimbal. Now you can use the hypersmooth on with the field of view set to linear plus horizon lock when you do static shots. So this lens was designed to be used in the linear mode only and with the hypersmooth off. Now with the hypersmooth and horizon lock, once you turn off hypersmooth, it will turn off the horizon lock. Once you turn on horizon lock by going to linear and horizon lock field of view, it will turn on the hypersmooth. That just proves to you that they directly connected and they're part of the same stabilization, which is again digital. Now yes, for sure, some of you are going to say, oh, but why would I want to lose all that stabilization from my GoPro? Well, I already told you, you're going to avoid getting the vignetting, because I never seen anyone on the internet, on YouTube, stressing that enough. And I see people just say, yeah, use it in linear, and then people go and still use linear and horizon lock. And when I watch their footage, you can see that they receive this vignetting on the edges of the frame when they, for example, vlog in with this setup. So again, I'm going to repeat one more time: horizon lock off, so only linear field of view, and hyper smooth stabilization completely off. In this example with the Skyreat Anamorphic Lens, I want to show you the shutter speed, which is set to auto, hyper smooth is off, and field of view is set to linear to avoid that vignetting, and I'm not using any mechanical gimbal stabilizer as far as my my body, my arm is concerned, and I'm just trying to keep it nice and steady. But most likely you are going to see the shakes as I'm walking about, but just don't pay attention to the stabilization because it's completely off. That's not the purpose of this example. In this example, I'm going to be walking from this bright environment into slightly darker scene or lighting conditions, and I want to see how the exposure is going to change, how the exposure is going to handle it. And in terms of other settings, my EVA compensation is set to -1.5. so again, there's no filter on this lens for the purpose of keeping the exposure correct, because as we said earlier, if I start to set the exposure manually as far as shutter speed is concerned, there's as much as I can do. So without any filter, I cannot control it and I cannot set it correctly. In this third example, and by the way, probably you can hardly see me, the footage is completely overly exposed, and I've changed now the shutter speed to 1/48, which is correct by doubling the frames per second that I'm filming at, which is 24 frames per second. So as you can see that without any filter, 1/48 is completely unusable in this type of conditions. You saw me going from bright to dark. I'm here at this beautiful beach. So check it out. I'm gonna flip the camera to this, and you can see how exposure is changing. And obviously in terms of cinematic footage, you want to completely control that exposure. We don't want that exposure to jump in and out and keep changing, unless that's the effect we are creating in specific scenes. Now the sun will be behind me, and again I'm walking from brighter to darker lighting conditions. So again, here I am walking through some shade. Again, don't pay attention to the shaky footage because hyper smooth is completely off. Now, you want to introduce another accessory if you want to perform like moving shots, and depending obviously of the content that you're creating, you might want to have that natural shake, and you might be able to hold the camera steady enough if you just do simple vlog. If there's little movement, it's not a big deal. Look at plenty of YouTubers who's using DSLRs or mirrorless cameras for their vlogging, and the camera is all over the place, it shakes and people watch it and it's not a big deal. But if you want to avoid that, you want to create cinematic footage, nice looking not static shots but steady shots, you would want to introduce accessory like this, which is a additional gimbal. And yes, this is the gimbal for the GoPro or other action cameras, and this particular one is the Falcon Inky, so Inky Falcon Plus, the newest one. I'm not gonna talk much about this in this video. I'm gonna have another review specific video for this device. It's great. I'm just gonna tell you, it's amazing, and it works perfectly with the GoPro Hero 10 and the Skyreat Anamorphic Lens. Yes, you can balance it, it works fine. The whole setup is not too heavy, because this lens, once you put it on the GoPro camera, you're gonna see it's quite heavy, but it does work with the Falcon Plus from Inky. It is manageable for the gimbal to hold everything nice and steady, and the motors work correctly. complete this video, I want to mention to you and show you also what do you get in the box when you're buying the Skyreat Anamorphic Lens. For sure you get your anamorphic lens, and it comes with these rubbery silicone-ish type of covers. They fit nicely, but they're very easy to kind of come off, pop off. And as you can see, they don't cover the whole lens like with, for example, Max lens mod, but it's very nice add-on. It says here anamorphic lens on it. If you wonder, if you know, so you're not gonna mistake this lens for any other. And also you get this hard shell case for the lens. It's very nice. Inside you get the cloth to wipe your lens if you make any marks on it. And in essence, that's all you get. And pretty much that's all that you need. With all that being said, I am LASOM, this is LASOM Athletics. As always, remember, be inspired, be creative, and be active. I'll see you soon. On to the next one.